Heaven on earth. It's what we desire more than anything. This explains our addiction to heavenly experiences. We want to taste heaven in food that has been prepared with the perfect combination of temperature, flavor, and texture. We want to get a glimpse of heaven in the yellow, red, and orange hues painted on a distant horizon. We want to feel heaven in our most intimate and trusted relationships. And yes, we want to see heaven in the faces of our children, faces that look very much like our own. Of course, none of these things are ever perfect. They don't give us the fullness of heaven, but they do give us a glimpse. And that's the problem. While all these things are good, it only takes a glimpse to become addicted and turn good things into ultimate things. In fact, our desire for such experiences runs so deep that we will strive for them with reckless abandon. We soon find ourselves ignoring the one who promises us the fullness of what can now only experience in part. But who can blame us for trying to create our own heaven on earth? We desire heaven on earth because normal is boring, and the alternative is hell on earth. We love our glimpses of heaven, but hell is something we are just as familiar with. To say, my life is a living hell, is to say that life is not as it should be. Something is wrong, whatever that wrong might be. If heaven in part is life as it was designed to be, then hell is the exact opposite. From a biblical perspective, hell in its fullest sense is the absence of God. We were designed to have a relationship with God. To experience hell is to experience separation from God, a separation caused by our sin. So, what is your hell? People don't usually sit around a circle and share stories about what their personal hell is like. It isn't the first thing that comes to mind in small group discussions. Neither does it make for stimulating dinner table conversation. Yet, such a conversation is important. The hell we experience brings our greatest fears and insecurities into greater focus. It forces us to identify the way sin is at work in our lives. Because as much as we hate to admit it, quite often we make our own hell. We want heaven so badly that we inadvertently create hell. Our sinful nature runs the show. Instead of looking to God for guidance, we refer to our own selfish feelings and desires. The teen only knows that gossip makes her feel better about herself. She never says, I'm going to gossip and trash other people using social media because I want to become a lonely, emotional, self-absorbed mess. The substance abuser simply knows that it makes him feel good. He never says, I'm going to take this drug because I want to hurt those closest to me and turn my life into a train wreck. Most parents in our society simply want to give their children all the experiences and opportunities that they can. They never start by saying, I'm going to turn my child into a spoiled adult who thinks the world revolves around her. Hell often begins with a distorted picture of heaven. We know what feels good. We know what we desire for ourselves or others, yet we never stop to ask how our desires fit into God's design for our lives. We never stop and ask, does my picture of heaven match up with God's picture? Unfortunately, most realize their mistake after it's too late. We must experience pain before we wake up. It's only in our hell that we realize with horror that we distorted heaven. As we sit in our own version of self-imposed hell, it is beyond comforting to see God as He is through Jesus. So often, it feels like we are alone in our hell, whether self-imposed or not. And yet through Jesus, God teaches us we are never isolated or alone. Because regardless of how we got there, Jesus enters into our hell. Jesus' words are important. We should always listen to what He says. Yet the words Jesus spoke from the cross carry an added sense of urgency because of what is happening there. Oftentimes we experience hell in our misguided attempts to reach heaven, yet Jesus literally left heaven to experience hell with us. Nobody chooses to be crucified. The criminals crucified on either side of Jesus were no different. The Bible implies that they had done some very bad things. Yet, no matter what they did, it is a certainty that they did not want to be hanging from those crosses. They were most likely revolutionaries or violent criminals. Either way, they would have had reasons for their actions. Revolutionaries believed that rebellion against Rome provided a hope for a better future. Revolutionaries didn't say, I'm going to rebel against the Romans because I want to die on a cross. Even violent criminals would be focused on survival and perhaps the hope of a better future. Nobody says, I'm going to hurt people so that other people will hurt me. We can assume that both criminals were seeking a distorted version of heaven, only to find themselves in hell. And if you find yourself in hell, why not take your frustrations out on those around you? After all, misery loves company. The first criminal looked at Jesus. Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. For him, it only made sense to join in on the cacophony of insults. It can't get any worse. I might as well join the insult party and drag Jesus down with me. He could only feel the pain and loneliness of his own death. This is how it ends, eh? My life ends with violence, pain, anger, and then nothing. Because the criminal was so focused on his pain, he couldn't see that Jesus chose the cross. Jesus chose to leave heaven to experience hell. And yet the criminal could only see his own hell. What a horrific scene. And yet, in the midst of such violence, anger, and isolation, the second criminal, the man crucified on the other side of Jesus, could see the truth. Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong. They had made their own hell, but Jesus was different. He chose this path. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Remember me. These are the words of a man convicted by the truth. Jesus had done nothing wrong. In fact, Jesus was a king. And yet there he was, right next to him, experiencing hell on earth. The second criminal approached Jesus as a beggar. I got what I deserved, Lord. I sought my own version of heaven, and the reward was hell. I have nothing to offer you. Just remember me. Hanging on a cross, experiencing hell next to a man who is nothing more than a beggar, Jesus offers him and us a glimpse of heaven. Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. Today, not tomorrow, not in some distant hypothetical future existence. No, today you will be with me in paradise. Paradise. Not some fictional other side that is referenced to make our suffering more tolerable. No, paradise points us back to the beginning, to the garden God had made for the first human beings. A garden where death was a foreign concept and joy was the norm. With Jesus. In paradise, there is no question about God's presence. What is paradise without God? Well, it isn't paradise. It is something else, something that will inevitably always fall short of the real deal. To be frank, any life without God is hell. You see, paradise will always have Jesus at the center because Jesus is the image of heaven on earth. He is everything we were created to be. He is the image of steadfast, unconditional, self-sacrificing love. And yet, though he is the perfect image of heaven on earth, he chose to go through hell so that you can experience heaven with him. He is a God who saves to the very end. Nobody is beyond Jesus' power to save. Not a criminal on a cross, not even a sinner such as yourself. Today, with me in paradise. This is Jesus' promise to you. You bring nothing. He brings everything. You create hell. He enters your hell and promises you heaven. But can you trust him? Can you trust someone who leaves heaven to enter hell for you? Yes, you can. You can trust Jesus because you know with certainty where he is leading you. And knowing the truth, knowing where you are going, has a deep impact on your life. Jesus changes the way we experience hell on earth. We know hell will come because this world is not as it should be. And yet the promise is that things will get better. With Jesus by our side, we always have hope. With Jesus by our side, we can endure the present sufferings of this world as we, at the very same time, anticipate the glory to come. Remember me, Lord. He does. When you speak these words and set your eyes on your crucified Savior, you can know with certainty that he does. God remembers you because of Jesus. Because of Jesus, you remember those he has placed in your life. Jesus came for them too. When you see them standing on the precipice of hell, you don't say, "Go ahead, do what makes you comfortable." Instead, you pursue them, entering into their hell with Jesus as your image of heaven. You remember the criminal, and you remember the words of your Savior. Today, you will be with me in paradise.